What do you think's harder? Being spiritual in this current climate, in this current world that we live in the society that we live in, following your spirituality, or getting jacked after 35?
Being spiritual.
Why do you think that?
Because that would be my first focus, because if I'm highly spiritual, getting jacked after 35 doesn't offend me. It's an experience that I've had to have. That's going to teach me something.
But you think it's now what's difficult about being spiritual in this world now when we're surrounded by, the Western influence and everything that's going on? Why do you think now it's such a difficult task to believe in yourself and to be spiritual and try and push forward in the world?
Because everything comes from outside of you, like information-wise. If you look at the word information, like it's something forming inside of you based on what you're exposed to. So, but spirit's from within, as far as I know. It's inside. It's not for me to feel spiritual from an outside experience. It's for me to input my spiritual ways into what's external to me. Does that make sense? Into my experience. So let's say I get jacked. Yeah? How do I see this spiritually? What do I learn from it? How can I help other people not get jacked? So it's the experience is going to teach me something by default. If I have a spiritual approach, there's always a lesson in everything. When you fought and you've come back to win another fight, it's taught you something. So when you're fighting, it's an experience that teaches you all the time. If you're sparring someone, you got to be learning on the job. If you're fighting someone, you got to be learning on the job. Life is like this. You got to learn on the job constantly. And I tend nowadays to use a spiritual approach to learn. Do you understand? Because everything has to teach me something. Whether it's you, whether it's the dogs, everything is there to teach me something. Life's a test, and how you respond to said test depends on your will push towards evolution, either solo or collectively. Because if you evolve, I evolve, because we're around each other. So I'm always going to look to you and say, okay, how are my peers evolving? Am I evolving with them? Are we going separate ways?
So you think, just to go back to it, it's like the path of spirituality, you believe spirituality is an internal battle, something within yourself. And you feel like depending on how spiritual you are, it's how you process information differently. The information that you garner is external, but then depends your point of view and your spirituality is built within you. Explain a little bit more.
So I go into any experience. My perception will dictate how I experience that. Do you understand? So if I come from a spirit as high level as the spiritual experience, as high, the level of spirituality will determine how I deal with this. So I might go into, life does this to you as well. I have one experience, I deal with it. As I grow spiritually, I have the same experience without fail sometimes. And how I deal with it, this time it might be light. I might say, okay, that was light work. Do you understand? It's like, someone give you a combination on the pads. Depending on how relaxed you are, your state of mind, your sense of flow is going to be totally different. And this is what life is. Your perception will dictate your sense of flow through that experience. On bad days, it's going to be turbulent. I think, wow, okay, I dealt with that last week. It wasn't so rough. Why is it rough today? What's rough with my feathers? So when I go through the turbulent, I try and center self. Like, this is so important to me. I say, okay, look, why was that like that today? Why is that teaching me? I had the same experience last week. Why am I shaking through it this week? You know what I mean? When you talk about fighters fighting and they have a fight where they're flat and they don't know what's happened. And they think, okay, like there's something up. There's something in the armor, in like, you know, the balance. And, you know, they talk about chakras and things like this. In your whole sense of balance. You know, what are you arming yourself with? How have you trained mentally? How have you trained physically? How have you trained spiritually? Are you calm? Can you see what you're supposed to see? So like, if you're focused on one thing too much or an outcome too much, you lose your peripheral vision and it takes you away from the present. And all you can do is be present. That will teach you how to get to the next step. If I'm present in a space and I fully appreciate that space, I'm guaranteed to have a better experience the next step I take due to gratitude and living full experience.
So why do you think society now, or people in society now, struggle with these things, struggle to connect spiritually or struggle to understand the importance of what you just explained?
Okay, I'll give you a thing. When last did you look at the sky?
2 days ago.
You see the sky every day. You're exposed to it every day. It's a big sign, because two things people don't know is when your head's down, you go sort of into a trance mode. You start thinking a lot. There's no clarity in it. But when we look down, everything we're taught to do is look down. Your phone, everything. If you stick your head up, there's a lot of clarity. It's like coming up to breathe. So simple little habits, you know, like you don't know that's destroying you, so to speak. You're doing because society has geared it to do so. If I'm on my phone and I'm communicating with you and I'm looking on my phone, there's not a full interaction there. And this is important for anything you go through, like, and nature, like, I'll reiterate this. Nature is the greatest teacher. It's better than me or you because it's been around before us. Before we were created, nature was created. And it's there to teach us something. If we're scrolling through something, do we ever scroll through nature? Do we ever look and appreciate what's around us? Everything we look at sends us into a warp speed of judgment because you have to process so fast. And there's never going to be no clarity in that. So how can you connect spiritually?
So you think, you know, I looked at the sky 2 days ago, but that is rare that I do that. It's just that I was training on a rooftop and it was 7 a.m. and the sun was coming up and it was quite nice. So I looked at the sky. But I understand what you're saying, like that we're engineered by everything in society is engineering us to be disconnected.
Of course.
So, you know, you have to put in extra effort or knowledge or understanding to become more connected. Yeah. And I think for me, I think as a race, as the human race, the most joy you ever get is out of connectivity with other people. So there's a study that I recently saw, which is to do with rats and to do with cocaine, liquid cocaine. So they had one rat that would have, instead of the water filter they have on the cage, they'd put liquid cocaine in the water filter, and the rat would, and they'd have food. So you have two choices. You can either have food or you can have cocaine. And the rat would go to the cocaine over and over and over again until he killed himself, until he died. And then they built a super rat cage with loads of rats where they had a community and they had the same two options. And the rats that were in the community, they didn't need the hit of cocaine anymore because they had that connectivity with people. And I think that's kind of like a human race with dopamine and what society has done to us with our phones and, like you said, all these other things.